A very busy and pretty good season of new book releases is finally winding down, but we got a few more. Hi everyone, my name is Holly and I'm bringing you the possibly best books releasing in December 2020, and I have my fingers crossed that there's some bangers on this list. I have done these videos every single month this year, so subscribe if you want your monthly dose to know what fresh books are coming out. It is crazy knowing we are wrapping this up to start fresh in January, which is already looking to be very exciting, but nonetheless, we're going to jump right into December 1st, which has 7 books releasing on my list, and beginning with The Elephant in the Room, A Sky Beyond the Storm by Sabaa Tahir. This is the long-awaited finale for many fans of the best-selling YA fantasy series An Ember in the Ashes. I say long-awaited in normal publishing terms because it's been 2 years since the release of the 3rd book, and it's been agony for fans, desperately waiting to see what is going to happen to their favorite characters. The Goodreads page is full of utter despair. The series began in 2015 and rolled out into everyone's home libraries, but you don't have to wait long. December 1st is just a few days away for this epic fantasy to be in your hands. The Last Lives of Ardor Ben by Tyler Whitesides. This series has been in my last 3 new releases videos, and that's because Orbit is republishing them with brand new covers, and they came out consecutively each month, starting in October for our reading pleasure, and finally we can delve into this finale. It's a heist-based book. Imagine Mission Impossible within a fantasy world with dragons. In fact, the magic system is derived from feeding the dragons certain materials and then processing the excrement. The material is then used to determine the type of grit you end up with, which is just another term for like type of magic. A lot of people compare this to The Lies of Locke Lamora. This book is a freaking mammoth, coming in at a thick 700 pages, so if you're like your thievery types of books, check these out. King of the Rising by Kaysen Callender. This is the sequel to The Queen of the Conquered, which I read and really enjoyed last year when it was released, and we finally have the sequel, which I believe is also the finale. It's set in a Caribbean-inspired fantasy world, but do not let that fool you. This series is not like your other fantasy series. It's graphic, brutal, emotional, and a reflection of racism. It's an exploration of oppression, privilege, and revenge. There is very little hope in this story, and I have no idea where the sequel is going to go. All I know is that it begins 2 months after the events of the 1st book, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared because I've heard the ending is quite the mood breaker. A Fool's Hope by Mike Shackle. A lovely cover that either resembles the Dragon Priest mask from Skyrim or the mask from Dishonored. Whether or not it was influenced by video games, I freaking love it. This is the sequel to We Are the Dead. I don't own these books, but I envy everyone who does because man, I bet they make your shelves 10 times prettier. It's an adult grimdark fantasy. Honestly, I could probably count amazing grimdark fantasies on only one hand, and this has the potential to be one of those. It's an Asian-influenced story with no heroes. You can't read one review that doesn't compare this to Joe Abercrombie, and if you don't know anything about me, I freaking hate that guy. A Wolf for a Spell. This is supposed to be The Girl Who Drank the Moon meets Pax, in this fantasy middle grade retelling of a wolf who forms an unlikely alliance with Baba Yaga to save the forest from a wicked villain. This is obviously a storybook-centered plot with beautiful cover art. If the cover gives any indication to what the story is going to be, I'm very excited for it, which is rare, but that just shows that they did a great job with the choice of the artist. It's full of Russian lore and mythology. It sounds like it's going to be a really cute story with a lot of fairy tale magic in between its pages. Hollow Empire. The continuation of the Poison Wars is upon us. This is the sequel to City of Lies, which I actually did a whole video on earlier this year, where my Instagram followers chose what I read, and it happened to be this book. The series in general gets a lot of traffic from Twitter, I feel like. I see it all the time, authors share it constantly, and for good reason. It's enjoyable. It's definitely a slower start. I mean, the entire book is centered around a city trying to survive a siege, but once you get into the meat of the story, it really takes off. Hollow Empire takes place 2 years later as characters face the consequences of their actions and have to pick up all the broken pieces. Well, I hope you're ready for this next one because this video is about to take a huge shift in tone. The next book is We Hear Voices. The first thing that stands out to me is this creepy cover with this creepy child who's probably going to start giggling in the darkness. A horror debut about a little boy who recovers from a mysterious pandemic and inherits an imaginary friend who who makes him do violent things. Obviously, the story has a lot of triggers along with it. It deals with a pandemic, which is oddly familiar, and children getting a strange flu. As for 6-year-old Billy, who is on the brink of death, he recovers and he's not quite the same. If all of this doesn't sound haunting enough as it is, Billy isn't the only child who has these side effects. If you need something in a different vein than what you normally read, maybe this will pique your interest. Now moving on to December 8th, we have Gallo Glass by S.J. Morden. This is the same author who wrote One Way, which was published by Orbit Books in 2018, and was a sci-fi, as is this one. Though they have very similar covers, I believe they are not connected. This takes place in the year 2069 and the Earth is in flux. Whole nations are being wiped off the map by climate change. The world is desperate for new resources. Our main character Jack is on a spaceship amongst other people chasing an asteroid that promises riches. I don't know about you, but I absolutely adore that setup. A similar sounding story to this one is Adrift by Rob Beauford, where its story is very claustrophobic, and this one kind of sounds like it's going to be that way. I'm excited for it, and I hope it's now on your radar. Memoria. This is another adult sci-fi. This is the sequel to Fortuna. It's a space opera trilogy that should be able to keep you invested with its sibling adventure. That's right, a brother and sister who follow in their mother's footsteps to be ruthless smugglers. After a job goes south, they must decide once and for all how far they are willing to go for family. The engagement level here is strong, with the vast amount of detail of each of the planets in the solar system and how they are different. The series is definitely flying under the radar, and the book community is doing it dirty, especially with how beautiful the covers are. When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain. This is a companion novella to The Empress of Salt and Fortune. They are both published by Tor. I'll be honest, I was not interested in the first book at all because of the title. It uses the blank of blank and blank template, which I just stay away from altogether nowadays. But when I saw the cover for its sequel, I immediately changed my mind and bought it on my Kindle and totally plan on giving it a chance. It's an Asian-inspired story following Chi, a non-binary cleric, and her companions. It's a quiet tale of how an empire rose and fell, and they are both very short books to fly through this winter. Up next, I have A Universe of Wishes. This is a young adult fantasy short story collection featuring some of the best own voices authors, including V. Schwab, Libba Bray, Rebecca Roanhorse, Tochi Unbuchi, Tessa Grattan, and many more. It's a huge collaboration to celebrate diversity. This seems interesting, especially if you've read some of these authors' past works, because for example, like V.E. Schwab's story, it's an origin story between characters of the Shades of Magic series, so if you're a fan, this might be for you. Also, it's just a really important book in general. Owlcrate is actually doing a special edition box centered around this, so if you're interested, that will be linked down below for you. I only have one book coming out on the 15th, and that is The Part About the Dragon Was Mostly True. This is a new fantasy. It's the first book to the Heloise the Bard series, and it's one that doesn't take itself seriously. It's full of humor following an oddball band of would-be adventurers who want to make a name for themselves by killing a dragon. The concept behind this book, though, may not be genre-busting. It's full of comedic circumstances. It sounds like one of those books that you can just sit down and read on one of those days where you just don't give a fuck. Next book, please. And on the 29th, we have The Wrong Family. This is a twisted psychological thriller that promises to turn your world upside down. It follows Juno, who is 67 years old and lives with the Crouch family. And for the most part, she keeps to herself, except for when she cannot ignore a strange conversation between husband and wife, and this sets off a horrible chain reaction. I really wanted to include this one on my list because I've oddly been in the mood for thrillers lately. I don't know why. As a fantasy addict, this is surprising. So this one sounded interesting, and maybe you'll agree, but this is coming to stores near you at the very tail end of December. And that is all for December and for the year of 2020. Tell me down below what you think of some of these titles. Will you be picking any of them up? Have you read any of them already? I know a lot of them are in NetGalley. If you liked this video, click the like button. It really helps me out. And if you're not subscribed, now is a great time to do so because I will be continuing to bring you more book releases in 2021. Thank you so much for watching, and until we meet again, happy reading.